Across the vastness of Africa, a profound spiritual legacy lies hidden, passed down through generations. From ancient rituals to timeless wisdom, African spirituality is far more than what many have been led to believe. It's a key to understanding the world and ourselves in ways we've long forgotten. For centuries, African spiritual traditions have been misunderstood and misrepresented. What's often dismissed as primitive or superstitious actually holds secrets about life, nature, and the universe that many modern practices have yet to tap into. Why does this ancient wisdom still resonate today? What can we learn from the ways our ancestors connected to the spiritual world? In this video, we will dive deep into the hidden truths of African spirituality, exploring its core philosophies, rituals, and practices that have shaped cultures across the continent. From the revered ancestors to the spiritual leaders, every aspect of African spirituality offers something unique and powerful. The connections between the material and spiritual worlds are more intricate than we ever imagined, and they still guide millions today. At the heart of African spirituality lies a deep understanding of the interconnectedness of all life. Unlike Western religions, which often have clear boundaries between the sacred and the secular, African spirituality weaves together the spiritual, material, and natural worlds. It is not simply a religion, but a holistic worldview that encompasses belief systems, customs, rituals, and practices passed down through generations. The diversity across Africa is immense, with each culture contributing unique perspectives, but there are common threads that bind them all together, such as the reverence for nature, ancestors, and the divine. Many African communities believe that everything in existence, from the smallest grain of sand to the largest mountain, possesses spirit and purpose. This reverence extends beyond the physical world to include the spiritual realms where the ancestors reside. It's a world where life, death, and the afterlife are intricately linked, and the natural world is seen as a direct manifestation of the divine. One of the most profound aspects of African spirituality is the deep connection to ancestors. Ancestors are not seen as distant figures of the past, but as active participants in the daily lives of their descendants. In many African traditions, it is believed that ancestors serve as guardians, guiding their living relatives through challenges and offering protection, wisdom, and blessings. For example, in traditional African societies, a common practice is to honor the ancestors with offerings and prayers. This helps maintain the balance between the living and the spiritual realms. In some communities, a person's name might even carry the memory of an ancestor, ensuring that their legacy is always present and revered. This deep connection to ancestors provides a sense of continuity, belonging, and purpose, and it forms a key pillar of African spiritual life. Unlike many organized religions that emphasize doctrine and worship in specific forms, African spirituality is experiential. It's about personal connection and lived experience. It isn't confined to a single religious text or set of beliefs, but is expressed through practices that align with the values of respect, harmony, and balance. African spirituality also differs from Western religions in the way it embraces fluidity and adaptation. As societies change, so do the practices and interpretations of spirituality. It evolves, but its essence remains grounded in connection to the divine, the ancestors, and the natural world. This distinction is important because it challenges the way African spirituality has often been perceived through the lens of colonialism or Western religious superiority. Many Western narratives have painted African spiritual practices as backward or superstitious, failing to recognize that these systems have not only withstood the test of time, but have also been remarkably resilient and adaptive. The origins of African spirituality trace back to ancient civilizations, where complex systems of belief were established long before the influence of outside forces. The Egyptian civilization, often considered the cradle of African spirituality, developed sophisticated religious practices that shaped much of the continent's spiritual landscape. In Egypt, gods and goddesses like Ra, Isis, and Osiris were seen as governing forces over not only the land, but the cycles of life, death, and rebirth. These spiritual concepts, centered on harmony, balance, and justice, laid the foundation for many spiritual systems throughout Africa. As African civilizations evolved, so too did their spiritual practices. The Kingdom of Mali, with its wealth of cultural and spiritual richness, emphasized ancestor veneration and a profound relationship with nature. The people believed that the earth was sacred, and the spiritual and physical worlds were intricately intertwined. In places like Ghana and the ancient Kingdom of Kush, similar reverence for ancestors and the earth was maintained, showing a consistent thread of spiritual belief across time and geography. Throughout Africa, spiritual systems were highly local, shaped by specific environments, histories, and interactions with other cultures. However, these systems shared a common belief in the interconnectedness of the universe and the presence of divine energy in all living things. From the highlands of Ethiopia to the rainforests of the Congo, African spirituality was seen as both a personal journey and a communal experience, with rites of passage, healing rituals, and sacred festivals uniting people in their connection to the divine. Despite the disruptions brought by colonization and the transatlantic slave trade, which sought to erase African spiritual practices, much of this ancient wisdom managed to survive, albeit in hidden forms. These practices were passed down in secret, adapted to new environments, and preserved through oral traditions. Even in the face of colonial education and Christian missionary efforts to convert African populations, many people maintained their spiritual beliefs, often blending them with the teachings of Christianity or Islam in unique syncretic forms. The African spiritual worldview, particularly in ancient Egypt, continues to influence modern spiritual and philosophical thought. Concepts like the importance of balance, the notion of divine justice, and the practice of living in harmony with nature are not only present in African spirituality, but have permeated global philosophical systems. The legacies of African spiritual practices can be seen in philosophies such as Pan-Africanism, which seeks to reclaim African identity and culture, and in contemporary movements that emphasize healing, wellness, and environmental stewardship. Rituals and ceremonies are central to African spirituality, acting as a bridge between the physical and spiritual worlds. These rituals are performed to maintain balance, seek guidance, heal the sick, honor ancestors, and celebrate the seasons. In many African communities, rituals are not just religious acts, but are deeply woven into the fabric of daily life. For example, initiation rites mark significant life transitions, such as adulthood, the transition from one stage of life to the next. These rites are often accompanied by physical and emotional tests, which are believed to prepare individuals to connect more deeply with the spiritual world. Healing ceremonies are another key aspect of African spiritual practice. Healers, often considered spiritual leaders or shamans, use a combination of herbs, chants, prayers, and divination to restore balance to individuals or communities. These healing practices are based on the belief that illness or misfortune is often caused by spiritual imbalances or disconnections from ancestral spirits. In many African communities, physical health is seen as inseparable from spiritual health, and healing rituals address both dimensions simultaneously. Drumming, dancing, and chanting are essential parts of many African spiritual practices. These activities are seen as ways to communicate with the divine and summon spiritual forces. The rhythmic beats of drums are believed to open the spiritual gates, allowing the presence of ancestors and deities to enter. Dance and chant serve to align the body and soul, creating a state of spiritual ecstasy where individuals can experience divine revelations. These forms of expression are not just ceremonial, they are deeply therapeutic, promoting healing and unity within the community. Divination is another crucial practice in African spirituality. Systems like the Ifa divination, practiced in many West African cultures, involve the use of symbolic signs and patterns, interpreted by a diviner to provide guidance and insight into one's life. The diviner acts as a spiritual intermediary, seeking answers from the divine and the ancestors. Divination serves as a way to communicate directly with spiritual forces, helping individuals make important decisions or understand the underlying causes of challenges they are facing. Sacred spaces and symbols also play a vital role in African spiritual practices. Sacred groves, altars, and shrines are common places where individuals go to offer prayers, sacrifices, or seek guidance. These spaces are considered portals between the material and spiritual worlds, where the divine presence can be felt more strongly. Many African cultures also use symbols to communicate complex spiritual ideas, such as the Ankh in Egypt, which symbolizes life, and the Adinkra symbols of the Akan people, each representing a unique concept or philosophical idea. Spiritual leaders, often elders, shamans, or priests, hold significant roles within African spiritual systems. They are the keepers of knowledge, guides to the community, and mediators between the physical and spiritual realms. Their wisdom is passed down orally, ensuring the continuity of spiritual teachings. These leaders also serve as moral authorities, helping to maintain the spiritual and social order within their communities. In many cultures, the spiritual leader is not only respected for their knowledge, but also for their ability to maintain balance and harmony within the community. The wisdom of our ancestors is one of the most powerful aspects of African spirituality. It's not just about beliefs or rituals, it's about the deep knowledge they passed down, which continues to guide and inspire today. For many African communities, the ancestors are seen as the keepers of knowledge, offering insight into life's challenges, the natural world, and even the cosmos. This knowledge wasn't limited to spiritual matters, but also encompassed fields like agriculture, healing, and astronomy. For example, many African cultures have long understood the importance of ecological balance. Indigenous African knowledge of sustainable farming practices, such as crop rotation and companion planting, is a testament to their deep understanding of the Earth's cycles. These practices, passed down through generations, highlight the interconnectedness of the spiritual and material worlds, where the health of the land directly influences the well-being of the people. African spirituality also teaches that the material world is not separate from the spiritual. Life, death, and the afterlife are intimately connected in many African traditions. The belief in an afterlife is common, but it's not seen as a distant, separate realm. Instead, it's a continuation of existence in another form. Ancestors are believed to watch over their descendants, offering protection and guidance. This belief in an active, ongoing relationship with the ancestors is a key part of the spiritual practice that continues to shape African life today. Another essential element of African spirituality is the idea of communal life. It's a spiritual practice that goes beyond the individual. The spiritual well-being of the community is as important as that of the individual. African spirituality emphasizes collective rituals, prayers, and celebrations, where everyone plays a part in maintaining harmony and balance. This collective consciousness ensures that no one is left behind, and everyone shares in the spiritual strength of the group. It's a system built on mutual support, respect, and a shared understanding of the importance of community and family. The resilience of African spirituality is remarkable. Despite centuries of colonization, forced religious conversion, and the suppression of traditional practices, African spiritual systems have survived. In many cases, they were forced underground, hidden in plain sight, or transformed into new forms. African spiritual practices merged with Christianity and Islam in ways that created unique syncretic belief systems, ones that continue to thrive today. From Afro-Caribbean religions like Vodou and Santeria to modern African-based spiritual movements, the legacy of African spirituality is still alive, adapting and growing in new environments. Even in the face of modern challenges, the wisdom of African spirituality provides valuable lessons. It teaches us the importance of balance, respect for nature, the significance of community, and the ongoing connection between the physical and spiritual worlds. These teachings are more than just relics of the past. They are practices that can offer guidance in a world that often feels disconnected from its spiritual roots. African spirituality has experienced a global resurgence in recent decades, as people from diverse backgrounds rediscover its profound teachings and practices. This resurgence isn't just about reclaiming a forgotten past, but about finding relevance in today's world. African spiritual principles are being embraced worldwide, particularly within movements focused on holistic health, environmentalism, and personal empowerment. As the world increasingly seeks answers to modern challenges, such as ecological collapse, mental health crises, and disconnection from community, African spiritual practices offer timeless wisdom that speaks to the heart of these issues. One significant area where African spirituality has had a global impact is in the realm of wellness and healing. In an era dominated by modern medicine, African spiritual healing practices are being sought out by individuals seeking alternatives to conventional treatment. From herbal remedies rooted in ancestral knowledge to practices like energy healing and meditation, African spiritual systems emphasize balance, energy flow, and the interconnectedness of the body, mind, and spirit. These practices are resonating with a growing number of people who are looking for more than just a physical cure. They want to heal holistically. Environmentalism has also found a natural ally in African spirituality. Many African traditions hold a deep reverence for the earth, viewing nature not only as a resource but as a sacred entity. This perspective is reflected in the respect for animals, plants, rivers, and mountains, each considered to be imbued with spiritual significance. As the global community grapples with climate change and environmental degradation, the values of stewardship and sustainability inherent in African spirituality are being rediscovered. Movements that focus on reconnecting with nature and living sustainably are beginning to look to African practices for inspiration and guidance. The idea of reclaiming one's roots and heritage is also a powerful aspect of the modern African spiritual movement. For people of African descent, reconnecting with their ancestral spirituality is a way to heal from the historical trauma of slavery, colonialism, and forced cultural erasure. Afro-spirituality, a term that encapsulates the fusion of African spiritual practices with modern identity, is growing in popularity. It encourages individuals to reclaim their power, embrace their cultural heritage, and restore a connection with their ancestors. This practice not only helps to revive African spiritual traditions, but also empowers individuals to find healing and empowerment through their identity. In addition, African spiritual practices are influencing global religious movements, as people of all backgrounds look to these systems for answers to existential questions and a sense of community. Many contemporary spiritual seekers are turning to African-centered teachings, whether it's through the study of African philosophies like Ubuntu, I am because we are, or the practice of African-based religions like Yoruba and Vodou. These practices, which emphasize community, connection, and respect for the earth, are helping to foster a more inclusive and spiritually aware global community. In this way, African spirituality is not just surviving, it is thriving and influencing modern thought across the globe. Whether through environmental activism, healing, or cultural empowerment, the teachings of African spirituality are providing a roadmap for the future, showing us how to live in harmony with ourselves, each other, and the earth. For centuries, African spirituality has been surrounded by myths and misconceptions, many of which have been perpetuated through colonization and the spread of Christianity and Islam across the continent. These religions often viewed African spiritual practices as primitive, barbaric, or even evil, a perception that still lingers in some parts of the world today. However, these myths are not only misleading, they are also deeply damaging. One of the most persistent myths about African spirituality is the idea that it is somehow primitive or underdeveloped compared to Western religious systems. This narrative was often used to justify colonization and the destruction of African cultural and spiritual practices. Yet, in reality, African spiritual systems are some of the oldest and most sophisticated in the world. They are rich with complex philosophies, intricate rituals, and a deep understanding of the natural world. These practices have stood the test of time, adapting to changing circumstances while retaining their core values. Another common misconception is that African spirituality is synonymous with black magic or witchcraft. This misrepresentation has often been used to demonize indigenous spiritual practices. However, magic in African spiritual contexts is vastly different from the way it's often portrayed in popular culture. Magic in African spirituality is typically a force for good, a way to heal, protect, and restore balance. When practiced with integrity and respect, it is used for positive purposes such as healing, blessing, and maintaining harmony within communities. The concept of witchcraft in African traditions is often misunderstood and misrepresented. In many cultures, it is not seen as a practice of malevolent intent, but rather as an imbalance of spiritual forces that can be corrected. Similarly, many have falsely equated African spiritual practices with devil worship. This is particularly prominent in regions where Christianity has been aggressively promoted, and the idea of satanic African religions has been used to fuel fear and misunderstanding. In truth, African spirituality is deeply rooted in the belief of a divine presence, and many African spiritual systems are inherently monotheistic or include a supreme God figure. The view that African spirituality involves devil worship is not only a gross misunderstanding, but also a distortion of the deeper, more harmonious aspects of African belief systems. Even the practice of ancestor veneration has been misunderstood by many outside the African tradition. Some critics view it as idolatry or superstitious, failing to recognize that ancestors are seen as revered elders whose wisdom continues to guide and protect their descendants. The practice of honoring ancestors is not about worshiping idols, but maintaining a connection with the past to ensure the spiritual and social health of the living. It is about showing gratitude and respect for those who paved the way and seeking their guidance. These myths have not only distorted the true essence of African spirituality, but also contributed to the marginalization and suppression of these practices. Yet, the resilience of African spirituality has allowed it to persist despite these challenges. Today, more people are waking up to the truth, recognizing that African spiritual systems are not only valid, but vital. They offer a deep connection to the earth, a profound understanding of human existence, and a way to live in harmony with the spiritual realm. As we've explored, African spirituality is far more than a set of practices or beliefs. It is a living, breathing force that has shaped the lives of millions for thousands of years. From its origins in ancient civilizations like Egypt to the rich, diverse spiritual systems that exist across the continent today, African spirituality offers a depth of wisdom and understanding that transcends time and place. It teaches us the importance of balance, community, and respect for the earth and all living things. It shows us how to live in harmony with the physical and spiritual worlds, offering a model for navigating the complexities of modern life. In our journey today, we've learned that the true power of African spirituality lies in its resilience, its adaptability, and its unwavering connection to the divine. Despite centuries of oppression, colonization, and misrepresentation, African spiritual traditions have not only survived but thrived, continuing to influence global movements in wellness, environmentalism, and identity. These practices are not just relics of the past. They are vibrant, living traditions that hold the answers to some of today's most pressing questions. For anyone looking to deepen their spiritual journey, reclaim their ancestral roots, or simply find a deeper connection to the world around them, African spirituality offers profound insights and practices that can illuminate the way. By understanding and embracing these teachings, we can begin to heal the divides of the past, reconnect with the wisdom of our ancestors, and build a more harmonious future. So what's the next step? Begin exploring African spirituality. Seek out books, documentaries, and experiences that allow you to connect with this rich heritage. Honor your ancestors, embrace the interconnectedness of all life, and remember that the wisdom of Africa is not only the wisdom of the past, it's the wisdom for our future. If you found this journey enlightening, please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel for more thought-provoking content, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Together, we can keep the spirit of our ancestors alive and pass it forward to future generations.